Hello everyone, I'm International Max Warmerdam, I'm from the Netherlands, and today I'm going to be covering a video for Chess Meal in which I discuss the bishop and also the bishop pair especially versus knights. Because these days actually we consider, like we used to consider the knight and the bishop both to be worth 3 points, but it turns out actually that these days we believe that maybe the bishop is actually worth a bit more, maybe 3.5 points, because the bishop pair is just quite strong. And I thought an easy example would be this kind of position where white is about to promote with his a pawn, but because the bishop is just it can cover the whole board, so it's just able to stop it very easily. So if white were to promote, black can just take it and leading to a draw. But if he were to consider the same position with a knight instead of the bishop, then it becomes very clear that the knight is not able to cover that much ground in one move, or even close to one move. White is just able to promote, and the knight is just nowhere near to capture it. As you can see, it takes a lot of moves, and it like 4 moves, and it's almost to the corner. While for the bishop, it only took 1 move, as you could see. So this is especially one of the reasons why the bishop is a bit stronger than the knight. It's not in all cases, so you shouldn't be exchanging your knights for bishops always, but they are in general stronger than the knights. And I thought a basic example that we can see very often is this type of endgame, in which white is the bishop pair versus knight and the bishop. And why this type of endgame is better for white is basically that there are 2 pawn islands for both sides, as you can see. And that kind of means that there's going to be action on both sides of the board. And as you saw, the bishop is able to cover more ground in lesser moves than the knights. So this is slightly better for white, because at some point the knight will, for example, in this position be on the king side, where it might actually need to be on the queen side. So white will try to increase pressure on both flanks, while black is not really able to do much. For example, if white were to play a move like bishop e3, he's attacking the a7 pawn. Black kind of needs to do something about it, so he goes ahead and plays a6. Now white does not threaten anything, but in such endgames what white would really like to is to grab some space. And if you want to grab some space, you push the pawns forward, and this should be on either flank. So white should be trying to push the pawns. Let's say black does nothing, a5, and as you can see, black is starting to get some weaknesses, because it's not actually that easy to cover the pawns anymore, because the knight just can be taken on almost any square. So if it were to protect the pawns on c5, then white might eventually just exchange it and go after the pawns. So let's say black plays knight e7, white goes bishop e4. Black already needs to be careful because the pawns are quite weak. And as I said, maybe after knight c5, black or white could consider to exchange the bishops and then grab both of the pawns here. So in this way, white can increase the pressure. Black could of course still play c6 and be fine at the moment, but at some moment white will keep on increasing the space, and at some moment there's gonna be pressure on both flanks. As you can see, the bishops are not only putting pressure on the queen side, but they are also putting pressure on the king side. So if white were to increase pressure or grab some space on the king side as well, then it's going to be very difficult for black to hold this kind of endgame. And I thought a very instructive example of this type of endgame was a game which was played by Polgar, Judith Polgar, former world women's champion. She played a game against Goko in 1994, so already many years back, but it was a very instructive game, so let's get into it. Poker had white in this game, and she has the bishop pair, while facing a knight and a bishop. And she thought, okay, let's just go for the type of endgame we just saw. So basically just two bishops versus bishop and the knight. And what white would really like to do in this type of position is to increase the space. And then at some point there are gonna be too many weaknesses for black to defend. Already one weakness we can see in this position is the a4 pawn. And maybe eventually a few pawns on the black squares. Because what we can easily see is that black does not have a dark square bishop, which white does. So the pawns on light squares, for example the pawn on a4, is easy to cover for black. Because it can only be attacked once by white, while it is easy to protect as well. But the dark square pawns are not that easy to protect. Because they kind of need to be protected by the knight, like in this position. But the knight can easily be kicked away, because if a knight wants to protect a pawn on a dark square, then it needs to be on a light square. So the knight always needs to be on either of these squares if it wants to protect the g7 pawn, and our light squared bishop can always attack it on either of these squares. And that's also a huge difference between bishops and knights. Because bishops can only be on one type of square at the same time. The dark squared bishop is always going to be on a dark square, while the light squared bishop is always going to be on a light square. This is also one of the weaknesses of bishops. Because if, let's say, you get a position where you put many pawns on light squares, then your own light square bishop is going to be very bad. Because it is getting blocked by its own pawns, it can never really move anywhere. So that kind of means that it will forever remain a bad bishop, while the other bishop will be very strong, because it can move along its own pawns, and it's able to move freely. So there are some downsides to bishops, but in general they should be a bit better than knights. And I think in this position a great square for the knight would be to c5. So that's what Guko played. And the problem with this square though is that it's on the dark square. So the light square bishop is not able to protect it, which means that if white were to at some point attack it with the dark square bishop, it needs to be protected with the king. White cannot really attack it at the moment though, because bishop b4 seems logical, but it would allow the knight jump to d3, exchanging of the bishops, or the knight for the bishop, and this type of endgame should be okay for black. Black might be able to create a second pass pawn, and white basically lost its advantage because he has lost the bishop pair. So let's get back into game. Judith played king e3 instead of bishop b4 to go bishop b4 anyway, and it improves the king slightly because it's now in the center where it's able to do a lot. Black goes king e7 because white intends to go bishop b4, so I would really like to protect it with the king. So bishop b4 happened, king d6. And what we can see in this game especially is also that this pin is going to be very difficult to deal with for black, because it's almost always going to be there. Black can always play king c6, king d6 back, but one of the two squares is in a pin, so it's not really what black would like to see. And here Judith immediately increased the pressure on black's position. She went for f4. And the idea is basically, as I already said, that in these type of positions you would like to increase your space, grab some space on the king side, and eventually you'll see that there will be some weaknesses in the position. One problem here for black is also that if you're the defending side in an endgame, you would like to exchange off a few pawns. But the problem here is that if you take on f4, white is actually not going to take it back. But white is actually going to play king d4, attacking the knight once more. Black is not able to protect it because he has a light square bishop instead of a dark square bishop. And yeah, white is just going to win a knight on the next move. So black cannot really take on f6, or sorry, on f4, and he just went ahead with f6. Because white also had a threat. If black played a random move like bishop c6, white is able to take on e5, and black can't really defend the knight anymore. After king takes e5, white is just up a piece and should be winning this endgame. So black, not only is black not able to take on f4, but white also has his own threat. So he goes f6, so that after fe5, he can just take back with the pawn. But white is not really wanting to exchange off pawns, because it like decreases the amount of winning chances if there are fewer pawns on the board. So white went ahead and grabbed some space. As I said, that should be the idea in such positions. And as you can see, also what f4 did is that it opens up the diagonal for the bishop. So as I said before, one of the two squares to protect the knight is c6, d6. Also b6 is possible, but once the bishop appears on f3, you can already see that c6 is gone. So basically there's no king move left anymore to protect the knight. So it's very iffy for black already, and very difficult to hold. But it's not yet over, because black is somewhat solid. Like, the king is not able to enter. It shouldn't be able to enter on the king side either, so it's not that easy to win this game. Black's not down any material, but we'll see how Judith is gonna break down the black position. Black went bishop c6. It's hard for black to come up with a plan, and white grabbed more space with the move g4. And here maybe black should have gone for an active defense instead of passive, but it's a difficult position. In these type of positions, it's always difficult for black to say what you need to do, because you either need to go for an active plan or you need to sit and wait. And sometimes sitting and waiting might hold, but in this case it turned out it didn't. Probably in this position, if black wanted to hold the game, he needed to go g5. And the downside of this move is that it creates a weakness on g5, because for example white can take twice on g5 and black will have a few weak pawns. But on the other hand, he managed to exchange a few pawns off the board, and it's not that easy anymore for white to create many winning chances. So instead he waited. He should have probably gone g5, but he waited, which is understandable, of course. White went ahead and played g5. And the problem for black in this position is that he cannot take on g5, because fe5 is going to happen again, and if black were to take the pawn, then white can win the piece. So white went ahead and played g5, and black cannot really exchange it once more, which he would like to, as he would like to exchange the pawns. Also, the problem is still that after ef4 check, white doesn't take it back, of course, but goes king d4 instead, winning the knight and winning the game. So black played another waiting move, and now Judith came up with a very smart move. She played the move g6 here in this position, and it seems very strange, because it seems like black can just take it, but then we see why a4 was a weakness. The knight is pinned, so actually the knight is not protecting the a4 pawn, so white can just take it. And now this position is just lost for black. Because the problem for black in this position is actually that the knight is in an eternal pin, which means that black is never going to be able to get rid of it. White will now just play bishop b5, push the pawn, and it's just impossible to deal with for black, especially given that white has a second pass pawn, and this endgame is just winning for white. So instead, black played another waiting move. Judith grabbed even more space, and it's not easy to see how white is able to break through in this position, but we'll see what plan Judith came up with. First, she is going to improve her bishop, so she put it on c2, protecting f5, puts it on e4. Black cannot take it because the knight is still pinned, and now she's going to put it on d5, as played here in the game. Oh, sorry, no. She went king f3 first. This is very important, because the problem with bishop d5 is that black can just take the f5 pawn. So she went ahead and played king f3 instead of the bishop d5 move. And she wants to get the king to g4 to protect f5. Black waited, king g4 happened, now she improves the bishop. And as you can see, why you want to increase the space in this position is that g7 will become weak. Basically, black is not really able to protect it anymore, so that means that once it's attacked, it's gonna drop off. And then the pawn is already quite close to the edge of the board, so it will be promoting pretty soon if g7 is captured, and black will be lost. Black still needed to wait. Black actually doesn't have any other move than moving the bishop, because any king move would cost a piece. So he has to keep on moving the bishop. And now Judith came up with a very smart plan. Bishop d2. She finally moves the bishop away from b4, where it's done its duty to pin the knight. And now she comes up with a very interesting idea. Black moves the knight because it's finally able to, not allowing bishop b4 anymore. But here she had a very smart move. Bishop h6 was played in this position. And basically, it seems like black can just capture the piece, but after g7, white is gonna be able to promote. He's lost a piece, but he's gonna get a queen in return for it. And black seems to be completely lost in this position. This basically means that black cannot take the bishop, but if he is not able to take the bishop, then he's gonna be losing the g7 pawn and losing the game, which happened in the game. Black managed to get rid of the bishop pair, but the g6 pawn is just too strong. And Judith even came up with a very smart move here. Bishop to f8 check, allowing the pawn to move. And it seems like black is able to save the extra piece. He's got with knight e7, but after c5 check, black's not able to protect the knight anymore, and black resigned. So what is a logical way for finishing the game would be king takes e5, bishop takes e7 check, and now if black moves the king, the g-pawn is going to promote. So in this game we could easily see how strong the bishop pair actually is, and why maybe we should consider the bishop a bit stronger than the knight. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to Chess Meal, and see you for another video.